If you're about ready, you can go ahead and continue eating your dinner. But we want to go ahead and introduce tonight's speaker because a lot of excitement about having him here with us. I'll tell you just a little bit about him. Retired Colonel Hank Fowler. Of course, he's not a stranger to our group. He's attended several meetings over the last year. Your placemat that you have in front of you gives you some of the details about him. We don't want to take from him, but he's going to be sharing tonight about his military decorations, including the fact that he got 2 Silver Stars, 2 Legions of Merit, Bronze Star with Valor, 2 Purple Hearts, Prisoner of War Medal, and 3 Air Medals. So that's something. Colonel Fowler was selected as an Eagle in Air Command and Staff College's Gathering of the Eagles in 2012. He joined the ranks of aviation pioneers like Chuck Yeager, Benjamin O. Davis Jr., and Neil Armstrong. He was the first staff judge advocate to be honored as an Eagle. The 42nd Air Base Wing located at Maxwell renamed its courtroom in honor of the former prisoner of war, retired staff judge advocate, and our friend. Let's welcome tonight Colonel Hank Fowler.
Have a seat. Am I on? I'm on. Okay. Well, I'm glad to have Corky here tonight, because Corky, they told me that I could only speak for 30 minutes or less, and you know, for a lawyer, that violates the 8th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, bordering on cruel and unusual punishment, right? So if I go over, I may need you to represent me, and I'll think, okay, that's good. Minister stood up in front of his congregation one Sunday morning prior to the giving of his sermon, and he said, you know, I worry a lot about my mom. She's getting kind of old, and I call her quite frequently. In fact, I just called her this morning, and I said, Mom, how you doing? And she says, well, son, getting old is not easy. It's not for sissies. The bursitis is worse. The arthritis is worse. And I just gently hurt all over. But what really concerns me at this stage of my life is I find I can no longer walk. I can no longer hear. And I really can no longer see, you know, kind of blind as a bat. But thank goodness I can still drive. Dale, I think we ran into a few of those on the way in tonight. Anyway, speaking of driving, in my younger, more reckless days, as a first lieutenant, I drove an airplane called the F-4 Phantom. Today, old, antiquated, archaic, not used very much, but 50 years ago was the cream of the crop. 2-seat, 2-jet engine, supersonic fighter bomber, wide open with 35,000 pounds of thrust coming out the rear end, burning 15 gallons of fuel a minute. So don't tell me about your bad gas mileage. It probably got up to nearly 2 times the speed of sound, somewhere around 1,000 miles per hour. About the speed I think most of us drive when we leave here on Tuesday night. Stationed at Ubon Royal Thai Air Base in Thailand. And on March 26, 1967, as I was coming back from a mission over North Vietnam, cruising over the trees at a cool 500 miles per hour, ran into 2 surface-to-air missiles, which totally destroyed my airplane, and I had to eject. Now, John 3:3 says that you must be born again. I know that on that day, I was born again. Even though I was born again at several thousand feet over the earth, going through the sky at 100 miles per hour, few people can duplicate that. I was definitely born again. Then got in my parachute, and on the way down, knowing that I was probably going right into the center of Hanoi, the capital city, I remembered a verse that I learned so well, Psalm 22, verse 11, that basically says, be not far, O Lord, for trouble is near, for there is none to help. And there I was, me, myself, and I, and the good Lord, and that was it. Landed just 24 miles from the capital city of Hanoi, was captured very quickly, got a rifle butt in the head, stripped of all my clothing but my undershorts, tied up with some very coarse ropes, and then walked for the next 8 hours with all my injuries, driven another 4 in an ox cart and a truck. Took 12 hours to do 24 miles. That's 2 miles per hour. The freeway system up there was not really great. Arrived at the Hanoi Hilton at 3:30 in the morning, and all the way there, the only thing I could think of was the first verse of Psalm 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And I don't know how many times I said that, but been there, done that. And yet I don't remember ever having any anxiety or apprehension, because the good Lord I know had his hand on my shoulder. I got thrown into my cell, solid concrete room, either without a window or with a window boarded up, measured 7 feet wide by 9 feet long by perhaps 10 to 15 feet high. A 25-watt bulb hung from the ceiling and burned 24 hours a day. Now, if you would be sitting in Washington, D.C., you would be sitting at a latitude of approximately 39 degrees. Here in Montgomery, we sit at a latitude of approximately 32 degrees. Hanoi sits at 21 degrees. The sun, unbeknownst to many, on or about June 21st, does not stop at 21 degrees and go back. It actually goes up to 23 degrees, 27 minutes. Now, gentlemen, I know it's the earth that moves and not the sun. A little poetic license here, okay? Which means now the sun goes over the prison and comes back. And sitting in those cells with no ventilation would be tantamount to you taking your car out here on an asphalt parking lot on a July day, rolling up the window and sitting in it for 5 months. Now, I didn't have a thermometer, but I understand in a car like this, your temperature is somewhere between 116 and 134 degrees. Perspiration never dried, heat rash head to foot. All you could really do on that day, and I had about 50 boils on me, was lie on the floor to try to stay alive. And that was every day for 5 months for 6 years. Now, General George Patton, famed of World War II, once said, "I don't judge a man by how high he climbs, but how far he bounces when he hits bottom." Well, when I think you can say you have to lie on the floor for 5 months every year just to stay alive, you're on the bottom. And you've been run over by the bus, and you're under the bus. You basically have two choices. You can stay under the bus, or you can bounce up and drive the bus. I chose the latter, and I think any of you here could do the same thing. I looked up and I found Isaiah 41:10, which says, "Don't be afraid, for I am with you. I will strengthen you and help you, and I hold you up with my victorious right hand." And I can't tell you how true that was. Back to my cell. Many things there that we never saw that we take for granted in this country. For one thing, we never saw a toilet in 6 years. All we had was a bucket about the size of what you consider a paint bucket, and that was the extent of our toilet facilities. Our bed was either wood or cement. The Vietnamese do not know what a mattress is. We never saw hot water for 6 years, and I have to tell you this, but many, many months ago, while I was sitting in church with my wife on a Wednesday night, eating supper, and the reason we went there is because that's when they have choir practice, and they had me singing second tenor in the choir to show you how hard up they really were. A couple came up just lamenting that the hot water heater had gone out, and they hadn't seen hot water in 3 days, and how they were suffering. And I'll tell you, PTSD just jumped all over me. I looked at my wife and said, I didn't see hot water for 6 years, and I'm not sure they know what suffering really means. I didn't tell them that. I just said, I hope it gets better. But I was amazed how fast that came over, and I think sometimes we Americans get very spoiled. We didn't see shoes for 6 years. We were given what were known as Ho Chi Minh slippers, which are old tire treads with straps. But give credit where credit's due. One went 6 years, 72,000 miles. I really can't complain about the quality. Now, we did get certain rudimentary supplies. We got a mosquito net. And any of you who have ever been in the Far East know how important that is. This is a finely meshed netting that fits over, around, and under the area in which one sleeps. Very important because in any 24-hour period, you could kill 300 mosquitoes. We got a straw mat to put between us and that on which we slept. Our only clothes were two lovely pair of pajamas decorated in beautiful vertical stripes of purple and gray, I think specifically made for us by Charles of Leavenworth. We received what you would call a dishcloth, which was our bath towel. That's all we had to dry ourselves with if and when we were allowed a bath. I think I had 2 in 6 years. We did get toilet paper, usually a square about 9 inches by 9 inches, sometimes daily, sometimes bi-daily, sometimes weekly, you never knew. But the reason I brought that up, if any of your families ever complain about using the Charmin, they need to try some of this. It's got to be in the realm of sandpaper somewhere. And then once every 2 months, if the guards thought that they liked us, we received a small bar of pure lye soap that you could use on anything you wished, but you better make it last 2 months or you'd have no soap. Now, I don't know how many of you are like me. I don't watch a whole lot of television. I like to read. But if you do watch TV, especially sports, when they take a break, you will be harassed and harangued by commercials by Miss Breck, Miss Clairol, Procter & Gamble, Maybelline, etc., who I think try to give you one message, and that is if you don't use their product on your hair tonight, then tomorrow you may not have any hair. I always like to stipulate that I wash my hair almost on a daily basis with cold, polluted water and pure lye soap, and I haven't lost it yet. The gray hair corky I had did not come from my 6 years in Hanoi, but ensuing 3 years at law school thereafter. Has everybody finished eating? 23rd Psalm says, the Lord prepares a table before you in the presence of your enemies. You notice it doesn't say what's on the table. I guarantee you it's not steak and baked potato. Little bit about food in the third world country. When it is grown, it is not unusual to fertilize it with human waste. You probably know this, certainly the Marines and so on. When it is cultivated, it's washed in polluted water, because that's all they have. And when it's stored on the cement floor somewhere, because they don't have refrigeration, where the rats and cockroaches have free reign. So when you get it, you know it's filthy. But gentlemen, I went through 3 survival schools on the way over there, and everyone had the same message. You never, never, never refuse food. Simple rule, you can eat or you can die. Our main statement, of course, with that process, you have to eat what is being grown on the land at that particular time. They don't freeze it. Our main staple were 2 watery bowls of soup per day and 2 stale, unsalted loaves of bread. Now, all of you in here look real good to me. You get to be my age. You find Monday morning is a little too much pizza over here, a little too much Bud Light over there. And it's my considered opinion that if you go to the boob tube for a diet, you'll wind up looking like a sine wave. If any of you ever need a good diet, please come see me. I have one, I guarantee. Take away your food and beat you up night and day. My roommate thought at the end of 1967 I was somewhere around 87 pounds. Now, as I said, you have to eat what's being grown at the time. That means 2 meals a day. For about 90 days, you eat the exact same food. In the summer, we enjoyed pumpkin soup. In the fall, it was cabbage. In the winter, it was turnip. And in the spring, it's very difficult for me to tell you exactly what we did eat, but I think if you were to mow your lawn and boil it, that wouldn't be too far off. On rare occasion, and I mean rare, we would get a strand of meat. In 1967, July, I received my first strand of meat. Smelled terrible, tasted worse, wrapped around a little tiny jagged bone that I couldn't recognize. And what does a typical American do? Toss it. But as I say, I've been through these survival schools, and this is the first piece of protein I had now seen in 4 months. So I ate that piece of meat. Did not make me sick. I trust it did me a lot of good. 2 days later, I found an English-speaking interrogator, and I asked him what it was, and without hesitation, he told me. Do I have any guesses? That's what he said. He said it was rat, and I have no reason to believe that he lied. If we did get meat up there, it was either rat, cat, dog, water buffalo, monkey, horse meat, fish heads, which were often rotten, chicken heads, which were often rotten, hooves with the hair still on, or sometimes just the worms in the soup. But the 23rd Psalm says the Lord provides, and here I am 50 years later after that. Just a couple of real quick things. Medical and dental care, basically not existent. If you got sick up there, you either lived or you died. We did have a corpsman who was supposed to watch over us, but we used to say he probably couldn't diagnose daylight. Dental care was also completely absent. I was very blessed. I came home with 3 cavities. Probably thanks a lot to my deceased mother, who body slammed me on the floor all those years and poured orange juice down my throat. But a lot of my friends had teeth that literally rotted out of their heads. Just before we came home, I guess they opened up the Geneva Prisoner War Convention, which they had signed, and said, we're supposed to be giving these guys dental care. So they brought in a dentist. And I had 3 teeth filled with a foot-driven drill and no Novocaine. That was an interesting experience as well. January of 1973, our Secretary of State, who was then Henry Kissinger, Dr. Henry Kissinger, met in Paris with North Vietnamese foreign minister, and they came up with the Paris Peace Agreement, which basically ended the conflict. And part of that agreement was our release. And the way it was set up, and it should be this way, first come home, we're sick and wounded, and then in order of shoot down. Now, Lieutenant J.G. Everett Alvarez, flying an A-4 Skyhawk off the carrier Continental, went in there on August 5th, 1964. He was up there 8.5 years. He should come home before me. No problem. Okay, first group went home. Before a second group went home, they came around and gathered 20 of us, I being one. We became known as the Kissinger 20. They took us to a different part of the prison, and they said, we're going to release you early as an honor to Dr. Kissinger for what he had done to end the war. Well, we have something in the military called the Code of Conduct. I'm sure all of you know that. And it says, I will receive neither parole nor special favors from the enemy. We had our own code of ethics up there, symbolized by the letters U.S., and that didn't stand for United States. It stood for unity over self. And we had 3 goals: to bring home the honor of the United States, to bring home those who needed to come home more than we, and then to bring ourselves home. Well, we began to chat on this, and we thought this could be a special favor. We didn't think it would bring home the honor of the United States. Certainly would not bring home those who needed to come home more than we, and I just want you to know we refused to go home. Justice Potter Stewart of the United States Supreme Court, I think, gave one of the best definitions of ethics I've ever heard. He said, ethics is a difference between doing what you have the right to do and doing what is right. Well, I think by every test we had the right to go home 2 weeks early. I don't think anyone would even raise an eyebrow after we've been up there 6 years to come home 2 weeks early, but we didn't think it was right, so we didn't do that. February 18th, 1973, they brought in someone from the outside who said, yeah, gentlemen, it is a legitimate release. Quit embarrassing the United States and go home, so we did. Boarded the C-141, which has become known as the Hanoi taxi. About 30 minutes into the flight, the aircraft commander came on the air and he said, gentlemen, we have just crossed the shores of North Vietnam. Welcome to freedom. And I'll tell you, that word has a completely different meaning than I ever thought it would be. And that airplane is personally enshrined at the Air Force Museum at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, Dayton, Ohio. And I had the opportunity last fall to speak at Dayton, and they took me over and I stood by the door out of which I walked 45 years earlier to freedom. Does anyone have a question? Because I can't cover it. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to call it.
We're neighbors.
Go, Dale.
One of my favorite verses in the Bible is Romans 8:28, where all things work together for good to those that love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. Can you apply that verse in everything that happened to you?
Yeah, my only term on that would be absolutely. I mean, I did a little research. Corky, this will surprise some and shock others, but because I found, and I talked about being on the bottom, and when I talked to many of the young people at Squadron Officer Schools at Maxwell, I say you may not be on the bottom, but you will come upon that proverbial wall, and the worst thing you can do is turn around and walk away. You need to find a way around it, over it, or through it, because you are leaders, and this is leadership. And I did some research, and I found more than likely most, if not many, of our leaders of this country, political, athletes, writers, entrepreneurs, have hit bottom at some point in the thing. And I picked out just 4. One was Walt Disney. Before Walt made his magnificent empire all over the world, he did suffer many setbacks, including bankruptcy. And about this, he wrote, and I quote, "All the adversity I've had in my life and all the troubles and obstacles that I've faced have strengthened me. You may not realize it when it happens, but a kick in the teeth may be the best thing in the world for you." And I received my kick in the teeth, and I didn't appreciate it. But gentlemen, I probably wouldn't be in front of you but for that kick in the teeth. How about Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players we've ever put forth in this country? You never hear much about him, about his glorious exploits. Let me read to you what he wrote. He said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot, and I've missed. I've failed over and over again in my life, and that's why I succeed." Winston Churchill, very simple. Success is going from one failure to another without losing any enthusiasm. And then my favorite, Babe Ruth. He says, "Every strike I have brings me closer to the next home run." So absolutely, I think things do work for the better. I've got a guardian angel that sits right there on my right shoulder. I have no doubt. I am so blessed. You know, I came home with scar tissue on my brain due to the humane and lenient policy of the North Vietnamese. I have no rotator cuffs, no upper body strength, tuberculosis, 3 cancers, AFib of the heart, diverticulosis of the intestine, no pads in my knees, and yet I'm here in front of you. I'm like the old Volkswagen. I may be slow, but I go, you know? And, of course, I always have a lot of fun with that because anytime they take a chest x-ray of me, I'm very quick to tell the doctor, now, when you look at it, you're going to see a spot. Don't worry about it. It's been there for 45 years. If I don't tell them that, you ought to see the way they jump. He's got a tumor on his lung, you know, and everything. So, okay. Answer your question?
Yeah.
Anything else? Yes, sir. Oh, my God, a lawyer. Yes, sir.
I'm sure you had the Holy Spirit in you. How did that affect your walk?
You mean since then or during the time?
Bob, during that time.
Oh, well, you know, there's an old saying, there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole. And I'm not an atheist, but I found that saying most apropos because when you're in a situation like that, there's only one thing to hold on to. There's nothing else there to help you. You're on your own. And I have been so blessed. People say, "How are you?" And I'm so blessed I can't believe it. That's usually my statement, which is very true. And I don't understand it, but do appreciate it. And, of course, my life has changed so much since I've come home. You know, kindness to others, working for people, things of this nature. Totally different person than I was before I went over. Totally different. Yes, sir. You know, as a pilot, you get good peripheral vision because I can look at you and see what's going on over here. And that's important because you want to know if someone's coming up to shoot you down. As a lawyer, you get the same thing for the same reason, right? Yes, sir.
Pretty amazing that tonight Jeremy brought all
Yeah, I know Jeremy.
beautiful young men with him, and one of the things that I admire about you is that it took a lot of courage to go through what you did. It took a lot of.
How about a lot of fear?
A lot of fear. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. You know, worried you're going to get beat to death again, or shot, or kicked, or whatever. But your integrity is so amazing. What y'all did right towards the end, and denied taking the flight home and all that stuff. But what do you think is one thing that you would want those young men to take away from here that would help them in their character building, integrity, maybe a leadership quality? I mean, I'm so inspired by you. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But what would you say to those?
Ethics and integrity rank very, very high. It's something, unfortunately, even in our country, I think many of our leaders do not possess. Very concerned about our country right now and the divisiveness. And let me just tell you, since you brought that up, do I have time for one more thing? I don't like to bring this up because I don't talk badly about people, but this is a section, that's Miss Jane Fonda, you know, who had pictures taken on a gun site saying, "I wish American would fly over," so I could shoot him down. Well, I had a friend named Larry Kerrigan, and he was with 3 others, and they were told they were going to have to meet Miss Fonda on one of her visits. And when they're told that, they're beaten and tortured to the point they have to go and canned answers under the threat of death, etc. But anyway, this was before any of our names were released. You know, international law says that a POW should write and receive a letter every month. I didn't get to do any of this for 3 years. My first letter home was March 1970. Well, anyway, so before that, so they felt that when they met Miss Fonda, while she was on camera, when she finished, they'd come by and shake their hands. So they took a piece of that toilet paper that I mentioned, had a pencil, which they stole, and they put on those pieces of paper their social security number, put it in their hand, and sure enough, when she came through, they palmed it to her, thinking that for certain she would take it home and tell their families they were alive. But once the camera stopped rolling, she turned them over to the camp commander. All 4 were severely beaten. 3 were savagely beaten to death. They were murdered. And Larry Kerrigan survived. That's how we know about that today. So if you hear anything about her being put up for Woman of the Year, I hope you will remember that thing. But that's, you know, I went in as a brand new first lieutenant. And the camp commander said, "You're just a lieutenant, you're not worth much." And I said, "Boy, is that true. My name is Schultz and I know nothing, you know." And when that didn't work, you know, Boy Scout motto, be prepared. I had learned that the Vietnamese language was monosyllabic. That means every word is one syllable. So when I was forced to write, I used terms like surreptitious, parsimonious, egregious. I even threw in far fair Ganugan, you know what I mean? And you know, and they'd always tell me they couldn't understand what I wrote, and I said, "Gosh, I'm sorry to hear that." But you know, Boy Scout motto is so important. You know, you keep a full tank of gas, you don't plan to use it, but you have a fire extinguisher in your home, don't plan to use it, but keep extra food in your refrigerator, but you know what I'm trying to say? But ethics and integrity and a good religious base, I tell you, that goes. Got a fine gentleman, where there he is, hiding under those sunglasses up there. Yeah, I know quite well. So.
Praise the Lord.
Yes, sir. How would I define what, sir?
How a man is supposed to be. How would you define a man?
Huh. All right, Dale, give him an answer. No. Well, you know, I have, you know, the Bible says, good husband, good father, a good citizen. You don't just make remarks for the remarks' sakes. I guess what I would like to say is, if everybody followed the 10 things in the Bible, we wouldn't need all these laws that we have in this country right now. And that's, I think, do your best to do that. It's not always easy, and sometimes you have to buck the crowd. But I think a good man's good father, good husband, good citizen, and that is what Christ would want us to do. Anything else? Oh, yes. Oh, my.
Colonel Fowler?
Sir.
What are 4 or 5 core beliefs that come to your mind?
Well, I can give you one right off the bat, and that's the word faith. Faith in my Creator, faith in my country, faith in our government, faith in my fellow POWs, and faith in myself. You know, and you have to understand, the average POW up there was not some dumb thing taken off the street. In order to fly, you had to be at least a college graduate. And I'm sitting up there, and the guy to my left was Bill Butler from California, who had a master's degree from Stanford in political science. The one on my right was Al Bruno from Boston, who had a degree in astrophysics from MIT. You know, I'm going, duh. And you know, when the code of conduct says, if questioned, I'm bound to give only my name, rank, service number, and date of birth, and will resist answering further questions to the utmost of my ability. Ability is a big word there. It doesn't mean allowing yourself to be put on the rack and torn apart. You have a brain, you've been well educated, you've been well trained, you ought to be able to outdo these people. And I think that's one of the biggest things right there. A lot of trust in yourself. Take your education very seriously. You never know when it's going to come back and maybe bite you. Anything else? Comments, questions, queries? Oh, yeah. Oh, my. You're sitting next to the lawyer. Yes, sir.
Sir, appreciate your service. Appreciate you being here tonight. Being a pilot, what is your thoughts on the F-35 fighter jet coming to Montgomery?
Well, you know, I love the F-4. It was a very forgiving airplane. It was a Navy airplane. The only thing I never liked about it was the way it landed, because I'm used to flaring it on. This thing, you pile into the ground at 400 feet per minute. But that's the way it was designed. It never bounced. It never hydroplaned. I personally think the F-16, forgive my language, is the sexiest airplane on the thing. But it won't keep up with the F-18. It won't do what the A-10 does on the ground. It won't keep up with the, what's the one in Hawaii, the stealth F-2, F-22. In fact, I was over there. I had the honor of being the main speaker at National POW Day at Pearl Harbor twice. And I was talking to a pilot there, and I said, well, you know, in the F-4, you took off, you held the stick in your lap, you had full afterburner, you took off, raised gear flaps, you held that, came out of afterburner at 350 knots, and he says, we don't even use the burner to take off. He had more thrust in each engine than I had in both of mine. So I think it's an honor to our Guard to be selected to get the F-35. That's quite a performance. I'm a little surprised it's one engine. I like 2 engines in the air. I like 2 engines on the lake. I like 2 engines, you know. But you know, when I first started flying commercially, when I was in Germany, the airplanes had 4 engines. Then we went to 3. And now we're down to 2. Pretty soon the pilot will just be up there flapping his arms, but they become so reliable and dependable these days. Another question is, when can we afford this thing? I hate to think what each. Do you know what it costs?
I've got a pretty good idea.
What is it?
It's a lie.
Well, I know that. Would you say 35 million or better? Okay, that's what I was afraid of. Yeah. Of course, anybody who's bought a new car recently, they're getting much more like airplanes. You get a master warning, you look down to see what the problem is, all the warnings they give you around that we've used in that. Anything else, gentlemen? Yes, sir. Old Chinese proverb, he who seeks revenge digs 2 graves. I don't hate any of them, because whom is that going to hurt? That thing. But even more deeply in that, you know, having lived up in a communist country under propaganda and everything, I think the average Vietnamese up there really believed we were up there to pillage their land and rape their women. I mean that sincerely. So I don't hate them at all. I dislike immensely the system and the leaders. But I never even think about that revenge. However, should I be in North Vietnam with my .357 Magnum and run into one of my interrogators, I would not like to tell you what might happen. I'll need Mr. Hawthorne for that as well, yeah. You know, I understand that. I may run into one of them who treated me so horribly, and I would hate to just sit here and say I would do nothing, because I don't think I could say that. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Today is the 50th anniversary when we went to the moon. When did you find out, or when do you know when the person...
Interesting enough, you know, you use good lawyer tactics up there. For instance, if you suspect something, you look at the interrogator and says, how come Nixon did this? And if he looks back at you with one of these, you say, well, I blew that one. But if he jumps up and says, how do you know? Then you know. And they were pretty forthright. I asked one, I said, have we put someone on the moon? He said, yes. So we were told that right away. We were not told when Ho Chi Minh died right away, but all the music and propaganda all of a sudden went silent, so you can read between the lines of that. And that's, by the way, when most treatment changed. Torture for torture's sake went out. I mean, if you're a bad boy, you still get hammered, but no more of that. Conditions continually improved. I mean, we went from 2 water bowl soup to potatoes in the soup, a half a can of Russian fish and meat each day, 15 minutes outside to an hour to actually a half a day. You know, we were locked in these little cells and not allowed to communicate with other people. And if you were caught, the punishment was severe. I got a thing on my brain because dummy here got caught, you know. And but we had tap codes, hand codes, flash codes, cough and spit codes, you name it. We were pretty ingenious, and I don't have time to go over all that tonight. So, anything else? No, we didn't.
Know that before you got captured. Y'all taught that in training?
The codes?
Yeah.
No, sir. They do teach it now. But how much time do I have here? We, you know, I told you our main food was soup and bread. But every so often we'd get rice. And this isn't the rice that you get from Uncle Ben or Minute Rice. This has got a lot of rock and gravel and pieces of airplanes and God knows what in it. And July 1967, I got my first bowl of rice. And as I was meandering through it, trying to avoid all the trash and garbage therein, came upon something that I could chew, but I couldn't masticate. You know, I couldn't break up. It just kind of sat back there and went squish, squish, squish. Now, when I have a lot of ladies in the audience, I said, open my mouth and out it ran. That wasn't true, but I always get a kick out of the nonverbal response there. But I reached in there and I found it to be a piece of our toilet paper, unused. And on it were written in pencil in English the following words: God bless America, keep faith, Yank. Learn this code, signed 007. Well, no, we didn't have James Bond up there, but a lot of us had code names. So if you were caught with something that someone else sent you, no matter what they did to you, you couldn't tell them where it came from because you didn't know. You with me? 007 happened to be the code name of now deceased Admiral Stockdale. His real name was James Bond Stockdale. General Reisner's code name was Lobo, Spanish for wolf. Got to have some humor up there. My code name was Feo, F-E-O. Anybody speak Spanish in here? Ugly. That's exactly what it means, yeah. If I were to do it today, my code name would be Auspuff. That's German for exhaust pipe, but you know. And that's how I got the code. And, you know, you pass it on. And with that code, I memorized every POW who was up there, gotten through the wall. And we'd turn, like if someone said I didn't do it, it was my wingman Clark Kent, we'd make sure everybody knew not to say who Clark Kent was. You know what I'm trying to say? And then we played chess through the wall, you know, mosquito net, toilet paper, and all that. Quite an ingenious bunch of guys. Anything else? Yes, sir.
When did your family know you were alive?
March 1970, I sent my first letter home. Hi, Mom, here I is.
3 years.
Yep. Well, no, they don't do that, and Mr. Hawthorne can confirm this, but they used to list people as KIA. You'd be flying, you'd see them hit with a missile, big explosion, no emergency vehicle, no parachute, and then you get up there and guess who's your next door neighbor? And think of the legal ramifications on this, you know? Life insurance has been paid, wife is remarried, you know what I'm trying to say? So everybody from the time I was over there who goes missing was MIA, and I was MIA. Yes, sir. So another hand flicker. So there we go.
I was just going to ask, so you obviously knew Senator John McCain.
Well, yeah, I knew him, and of course, all of them, but we never lived. You know, I was a brand new first lieutenant, and he was equal to a major, and his father was an admiral, and his grandfather was an admiral, and their thinking was that the admiral could stop the war. So he went through an awful lot more than I. What I'd go through once a month, he'd probably go through every day. Legs broken and rebroken, you know, and on and on and on. So, though I lived in the same camp, I never did meet John while he was up there. So, yeah.
Did you meet him afterwards?
No.
Never met him?
Never met him. No.
Jeremiah Dennis?
Yeah, he was up there too. Never met him either. Yeah. Yep. Anything else? Comments, questions, queries? Oh no, now we have a minister. Go from a lawyer to a minister, I tell you.
How many men were there?
Well, I don't know. I think we're listed somewhere around 400 plus. Each camp usually had 60 or 70. And this is what I tell the young officers. The first thing we do is find out who is the commanding officer. And it may be a lieutenant. Be prepared, you know. So, in order to pass a name through the wall, you either had to communicate directly with them or get the name from someone responsible. So, and a lot of my names didn't come home. Yep. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Did you hear any side booms over the prison?
Uh-huh.
You did?
Uh-huh. SR-71s. Interrogator says, we can't get them yet. And I said, I don't think you will. Not at 90,000 feet at 4 times the speed of sound. No, I don't think you're going to. Yes, we did. Sure did. We knew what they were. Yes, sir.
And you heard B-52s.
All right, now that's, oh boy, interesting thing, because anytime the bombing would get severe up there, our food would go up in quality, but our treatment would go down. And I think it was their way of showing us that we weren't hurting them. No. B-52s came through the first time ever. Our food went down. Guards didn't have cigarettes. They had stockpiles of stones around where they, let me put it this way, first time we really saw the effect of the war while we were in prison, when the 52s came through. Yeah.
Do you still stay in touch with any of the friends?
Yeah, we have a meeting every year with all former POWs, usually in some quiet place like Las Vegas, you know. But of course, if I were a brand new first lieutenant and retired as a full colonel in 91, many are not with us anymore. But we do stay in touch with their families, their spouses and kids, and we have a newsletter, website, and all that sort of thing. Yeah. Anything else? Comments, questions, queries?
You know how many of the 400 are still alive?
No, I don't. But that's another. We got a list and a whole slew of people I live with, many of whom are younger than I, are deceased, and that's a hard thing. I went to the near 50th graduation this last weekend with my wife, and they have about 58 of them who are no longer with us. And that's a hard thing to accept when you live with someone like that who's younger than you and ostensibly in good health and educated, and you read later they're dead. You wonder why they and not me, you know?
Yeah.
So. Okay, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure and honor. God bless you. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I'm sure you were as inspired as I have been listening to Colonel Fowler. You know, I was wondering if we should do the pledge, and I'm glad, Chuck, you stood up. And, go ahead and have a seat. We'll be closing here in just a sec. We do have something to show you. You know, I know this flag is a piece of cloth. But when I think about guys like Colonel Fowler and those that fought under that flag and what it represents to our country, I really get upset when I see people burning it and mistreating it, disrespecting it. It is the flag of our country, and men like that have made us what we are. Amen. And so I don't want to get too deep politically there, but it bothers me, and I hope that our younger folks that are coming up understand the importance. America's never been perfect. We've had our problems over the years. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. You know. I want to share with you tonight, before we close, last fall I was honored to be able to go to Rome, Georgia, to WindShape up there. I don't know if you are aware of that camp up in Rome. And this was the Fatherhood Commission. And it was an incredible few days up there. But we were able to see a movie that was going to be released in the future. In fact, it was a rough cut. The music had not even been scored. They used music from some other movies in this. It was about 15 minutes too long. So suddenly the group that was there became a focus group to tell them how to get 15 minutes out of there. Scenes that could be cut, changed, shortened. But that movie is going to be coming out soon. And they made us swear that we would not say a word about the plot, what it was. I know I came back excited about it because it's really a good movie. It's called Overcomer. We want to show you the trailer. When is it going to be in the theaters? August 23rd. So Overcomer, you really need to go see that. Take your family, take your church. But let's take a look at the trailer.
Hey, 1 second, try.
Technical difficulty.
Mike.
Explain this uniform for just a second and maybe help you see how important this movie set is. Today, I will perform the funeral for a very good friend of mine who I served with in the Army, who killed himself this weekend. And there are millions of men and women who their only real value, they believe, is what they do. This movie has the chance to challenge people. In fact, it has the chance to challenge people like Jesus challenged them. Luke chapter 10, verse 20, Jesus said this. The disciples, he had just sent them out to go do miracles, to go spread the message of the gospel that anybody, no matter what you've done, you can be cleaned up and made right with